Hey Mob, it has been a minute since I did my last episode, and I took some time off after what was happening in the world with um, Cassius Turvey, some sorry business that we've had in our community in general, and just some things that I've been processing within myself and taking some time to sit and be with those things. And today I wanted to yarn about the importance of making space to feel our emotions so they don't become things that sweep us away. And for me, I'm a very emotional person. I have very, very big and deep feelings, and often I've either given my emotions and feelings the driver's seat, and it hasn't always, 90% of the time, it hasn't always gone very well, in that I'm very reactive. It's either been from hurt feelings, miscommunication, a trauma response, because I haven't how I wanted that situation to turn out, or how I wanted that person to um, hold space for me, or whatever it was, didn't go very well. And then the other times that I've avoided feeling my emotions or I've suppressed them, that's also had a toxic implication in terms of I've repressed things. It means I either become passive aggressive, I become resentful, angry, really negative, and that's just short term, where it means like I've lashed out at my kids, I've said really hurtful things in important relationships to me. And I might have meant those things, but the way that I expressed them did not serve healing or showing up in those relationships. And it was quite damaging. And you can't, no matter how much you didn't mean things the way that you express them, once they're said in that way, you can't undo that. And for me, more recently, just being able to sit with this idea of feeling my emotions, acknowledge them, make room for them, to be there to process them and to feel them, and not giving them the driver's seat. Don't make decisions from that space, is a different process for me. And it's definitely a practice, and it's a process. And it's really landed with me, particularly in this last week. So last week was my birthday. I turned 39, and 39 is a significant year for me, in that my mum passed away at 42. And I only have 3 years until I turn 42. There's so many different layers that come with that. Am I going to make it to 32? Am, am I proud of what I've done in the first 42 years of my life? Am I who I want to be? The fact that in the next 3 years, I'll be the same age my mum was when she passed away. And if I live beyond that, I get to do things that she never could do. Um, and that for me, 39, I've spent my teens and my early 20s, my 20s, I've been raising other people a lot of my life. And what I mean by that is the third eldest of 18 siblings. I was the oldest at home. I've been in a caregiving role from day one, being born a female and being born the oldest. It was just always a natural progression. And then being a First Nations woman as well, being a part of a collective culture, it's just, but it's innately within me as well. Like, I was born to be a mother. I was born to be an auntie. I have a big heart. I have capacity for deep love. And a lot of what I do is driven, a lot of my purpose is driven by my kids and by the future that I want for them, and the young people that I want to work with and support and empower to be their best selves. And for me, sitting with my cousin slash sister, if you know our culture, who we're both very driven, both ambitious, both have big visions and big hearts for who we want to be in the world and the impact we want to have through our work and through who we are. And we were both kind of in this agreement that 39 is about clearing the path of things that no longer serve us in who we want to be in our 40s. And for me, a lot of that has come down to, I spent majority of my life raising other people and not necessarily having consistent, stable environments where I could be raised myself. And what I mean by that is, like, my early childhood and teens was very turbulent. It was very fractured in terms of family dynamics, with my early years being that the first 7 years are meant to lay the foundations for who you are, according to child psychology and research. I agree with it to a certain extent, but I also know that I create my own path. But my first 7 years were hit by sexual abuse at the age of 7. My parents lost my younger sister at 3 months of age, when I was only 1 myself. My mum gave birth to my brother, who was stillborn, when she was 9 months pregnant, and I was 2.5. So in the first 7 years of my life, my parents together in their relationship buried 2 children. Their relationship broke apart. They were young themselves. I was sexually abused by a family member. My father cheated on my mum with my stepmom. They had a child together. There was so much that happened in that first 7 years in terms of the adults in my life, that it was a very turbulent time. And then that kind of rippled out into the rest of my life in different iterations. And I never really had that stability to be nurtured in who I was as a person, because the adults around me were dealing with their own dysfunction, their own turbulence, and they were doing the best they could. But it wasn't always the most productive, nurturing environment for me to develop into who I was as a young girl, and then into the woman. And it shaped who I am today. And then there's certain elements of myself that have stayed true to what I was born with, like being able to listen to my heart, looking around me and going, this reality doesn't reflect the narrative that I hold for myself, or the future that I see as being possible for myself and who I want to be in the world and the kind of life I want to have. And this has led to me either repressing feelings at different points because it wasn't safe. There wasn't spaces for me to express my emotions and learn how to be guided in channeling those emotions, so that I didn't become reactive or swept away from them. And they could be something that could be felt, but not allowed the driver's seat in terms of how they influenced the actions that I took, or the perspectives that shaped how I saw the world and how I experienced the world. Or in my expression of my emotions, it wasn't always the most constructive way of doing it. I mean, from I think 13 to 18, 19, my first go-to response when I felt unsafe, threatened, bullied, challenged, was to swing first and ask questions second. And at 18, I was getting into fights in nightclubs. I really started to enjoy and felt powerful from the physical violence of hitting someone else, and particularly with men. And it gave me a sense of power. It gave me, it just kind of anchored me with a sense of power, which was becoming destructive and really dangerous. So that was my first entry point into martial arts, because someone pointed me in the direction of the local martial arts club, and they did karate, kickboxing, and jiu-jitsu. And that's actually how I got my start in jiu-jitsu. But where this has kind of led to my birthday is kind of just sitting with all of these reflections of going, well, I am going to be taking back some time to be my own purpose in this coming year. And that I'm going to be saying no to a lot of other things externally, so I can sit and do the work that I'm feeling called to do, to lay the foundations for the vision and the calling that I have for the next chapter. And I can't necessarily articulate what's coming. I know elements of it, I'm feeling called by my ancestors, the universe, to be still and to be prepared to do some deep work, healing, showing up to my own story, sitting with myself and looking in the mirror and at who I've been, the experiences that I've had, who I am right now, and who I have the potential to become in the world if I'm ready to face myself and show up and do the work and lay the foundations for the potential of the impact that I can have in the world and the life that I can create and the things that I can do for in my lifetime. And I feel like what I've done up to this point has just scratched the surface of what's possible for me, by me, and through me. And that's some big things to sit with, considering I've won 3 world titles in jiu-jitsu. I was on the national wrestling team for 3 years. I tried out for the 2016 Rio Olympics, and that process took me to win a national title, Oceania wrestling champion, and then I made it onto the Australian wrestling team to the Olympic qualifiers in Africa. I was on the national wrestling team and was on the Commonwealth Games selection team. I lost in the qualifiers and was on the shadow team. I was an ambassador for the Commonwealth Games. Like, these things are massive. I've got 3 degrees. So I've got a Bachelor of Arts, a Bachelor of Teaching, secondary, and I've got a graduate certificate of Indigenous trauma and recovery. And these are amazing things, particularly when you consider that, when I consider the fact that I should not exist in the world as I do, as who I am and the things that I've achieved according to the narrative and the script that was written for me when I was born. Being born in 1983 as a fair-skinned Aboriginal girl to an Aboriginal woman and a white man with such a big family, living in low socioeconomic circumstances, the dysfunction that both my parents had, the abuse but the reality of being Aboriginal at that time as well, and the barriers that faced my community, still face my communities, being born a woman in regional New South Wales. The script that I was given was that I was barely expected to finish school. The narrative was that I was more likely to have a teen pregnancy, drop out of school, get a low income job, work on the block. And if I had a fairly functional relationship, I had a job and I had a family, like that was considered great. And for some people that is, but for me, I wasn't willing to buy into that narrative. My heart and this calling that I had told me that I was meant to do something bigger. I was meant to do something more. And the thing is, in order to become a role model for others, you need to become that. You can't be a role model without doing things, without putting yourself out there. And that's what I feel like is where I'm being called to go, is that from 39 to 40, it's about clearing the slate, sitting with myself and just really being with myself with integrity and just stripping it all back and going, what am I proud of? What am I not proud of? What do I feel have been the biggest lessons and experiences of my life? And what do I want to take moving forward into my 40s in this new decade that's in front of me? And for me, that's feeling my emotions. And last week was my birthday. I got really sad and I'm still kind of carrying that sadness that's been compounded by a few other experiences, in that didn't really feel like my loved ones made a big deal of my birthday, in terms of like the kids were like, oh yeah, happy birthday, mum. We'll celebrate like next weekend. And we had like a birthday dinner, had family and stuff around. But I didn't feel the love language that I speak to. Now, that doesn't mean that my family doesn't love me. It doesn't mean that my feelings are true, but it's what I feel. So sitting with this and going, I'm allowing myself to feel sad. I'm allowing myself to feel that I would have liked my birthday to be celebrated as being a little bit more special. than what it was by my loved ones. And also being okay with that. I know that my family love me. I know that I'm special to my family. And even though they might not have shown up for me in the way that I would have wanted, they were still there. They were still expressed their love and all of that sort of stuff. And it's also okay for me to feel like this. And then there's been some other stuff going on that I'm feeling really stretched, the edges of burnout with the load that I'm under in terms of having these aspirations and this calling to want to go back to international competition with jiu-jitsu next year, figuring out my business model. Kilalana's growing and doing amazing things, and not necessarily feeling like I'm equipped to be to have the managerial skills and the organizational development skills to build an organization, but also not knowing how to ask or reach out for help to bring people in to do that. And just feeling really stretched by all these different goals and visions that I have. And I know that they're all attainable. It's just the staging of things and acknowledging what are my strengths and then bringing people into that mix that can be of service to that vision and bring it to life. And then also really feeling uncomfortable, scared with the vision that I feel, the calling, the ancestral calling that I feel that my ancestors are calling me to be and do in this next chapter. In that, like, I don't know if I'm ready for that. I know that I'm capable of it, but what it's asking of me, what it's calling me to become, and the process that I would have to go through to become that. And it's not something I'm comfortable sharing yet because I'm still trying to understand it. Am I willing to do the work and make the commitment and the sacrifices that are required to become the person, the woman who can deliver on that vision? And what I mean by that is it's going to require me to really strip things back to their most simplest form so that I can be really committed to these things that I'm being called to do, which includes my motherhood, my impact work, the story that I'm writing. It's the next chapter. I'm calling it the next chapter that I'm feeling called to prepare for, this next level that is available to me, that I'm feeling called to step into. And I've been given this opportunity of this window, this glimpse into the future that I'm being called to, the woman I'm being called to step into. And it scares the absolute fuck out of me. It really scares the fuck out of me. And I'm worried that I don't have a good history with commitment. In that I'm not with commitment and consistency. When I moved to Melbourne, it was with the dream of becoming a jiu-jitsu world champion. As soon as I moved to Melbourne, I started training MMA. I got caught up in the hype of the sexiness of, yep, MMA, I grew up street fighting, like it's something I really want to do. I could prove myself there. But I was really called to do jiu-jitsu. When I won my first jiu-jitsu world title, I got distracted by the sexiness of the Olympics and was like, yeah, I want to go to the Olympics. Like, I want to do wrestling. I just want a fucking world title. And I decided to go and do wrestling. Now, I'm not saying that those things haven't served me and that I haven't had an amazing journey and experiences in doing that. And the consequence of that, or the after effect of those things, is that my jiu-jitsu now, in the 7 years that I had in Melbourne, I didn't utilize the time I had to be focused and committed and intentional with my training. It was just like, oh yeah, I'll just go to class. I didn't have a reflective practice, didn't have okay, this is my training plan between now and the next comp type thing, which I know now would have served my consistent development and growth and progress in jiu-jitsu. And then from 2018 to 2020, my personal life was going through some big upheavals. Emotionally, I was falling back into my depression, which is self-sabotage. And I know the pain of not showing up to your full potential, of being stretched thin And one of the things that's been a big barrier and limiting factor in my pathway has been trying to understand I have this calling to go to be on the international circuit for jiu-jitsu, and knowing that I can tangle with the best in the world. I've done it before. I've proven it. I mean, I've got 3 world titles. And this hunger to develop that potential, provide for it, and be able to do it. And also being a mum and wanting to be the mother that my kids need. And then this, how do I provide for that? How do I provide for my family to the level that they need, both resources, time, money, presence, energy, and also have the time and space to develop my potential in this thing that I know is bigger than myself. Like the power of being a role model, the power of being visible and going after that gives other people permission to do the same. Like that Marianne Williamson quote, we're not scared of our darkness, we're scared of our light. But when we step into that, we unconsciously give others permission to do the same. And jiu-jitsu has been such a vehicle for my personal growth, processing my trauma, becoming the person that I am. And for that 6 years, from 2014, 2015 to 2020, I was like, how do I take care of my family? How do I make money in a way that allows me to take care of my family, have impact, do work that matters, and also support my jiu-jitsu, which was helping people. It was starting conversations. It was inspiring people. And my emotions have often let me down in that space, because I would either become so self-defeated and victim mentality of going, this can't be possible. Why aren't more people wanting to help me? This sense of entitlement that people should be helping me because I'm amazing and I'm doing amazing things. Having a history of the people, the adults in my life letting me down and not being there for me in a way that they're meant to be there for me as my parents or mentors or coaches, and different experiences that I've had. And these were all genuine feelings and whatnot, but the mindset that I took and what I made them mean, and the power that the power that I gave to my emotions to drive my decision making and my actions did not always serve me. And not having more of a staying focused and going, does this, being more purposeful and intentional with the choices that I made, where I was putting my time, my energy, and my focus, and what I was actually developing. So as I sit with this and going, okay, I'm 39, I'm feeling called to, and it's not this ego thing, it's bigger than that. And it's not just about me. I'm feeling called, compelled, called by my ancestors to go back to jiu-jitsu and an international competition career. But on paper, it doesn't make sense. On paper and logistically, in reality, it doesn't make sense, in that I'm a mum of 6. I'm based in regional Victoria. I'm 39. My oldest is almost 16. My youngest is 18 months. I've got a business to build. I run Kilalana, which is our Young Titters program. It just, where the fuck am I going to find the time? How am I going to resource that? Particularly when our oldest daughter, Nacinta, also now has an international competing career. She's going into year 11. Like, how do I need to resource that for her? And yet I can't put it down. It's not a feeling. It's a calling. I'm feeling compelled to do this, that it's a part of my bigger purpose. And even though I can't articulate it concisely, it's a knowing that I have, that this is a path I'm meant to take. And this is not a surface level feeling. It's not a trauma response. It's not an ego. Yeah, of course, it's going to make my ego feel good to be say, yep, I'm a black belt world champion. But it's this knowing that that's where I'm meant to go, that is in my future, that goal is a navigating star for me in my journey and the impact I'm meant to have in the world. So this is the difference between, and how this ties into my birthday experience, is going, clearing all the things that don't belong or serve the vision that I have to be a role model for our women and girls, to be the mum that my children need and deserve, that I also want to be for them. and creating the space to be able to pursue this calling of going back to jiu-jitsu and pursuing my black belt, and then being on the international circuit in the goal to be a black belt world champion. This dream, this calling, is this the feeling of fear of going, how do I do that? How's it going? What am I going to have to sacrifice to pursue that? And how do I weave those things together so that each one nurtures and supports the other, that there's harmony between those roles? I've done it before, but I've always been stretched thin and things like that. And what support systems do I need to put in place? And this feeling of sadness of going, I felt those things, but I know it not to be true. And feeling disrespected and not valued for who I am and what I bring to the different roles that I hold, or supported in those roles in other areas that I'm involved in, or not being invited to participate in, particularly when you live in a small community and stuff, and you're like, hey, I'm in this space, but you're not, I don't feel welcome to put forward or to be valued in that space of what you're doing with the skills that I have and who I am, and the role that I'm playing in our community and whatnot, is feelings that I have, and they're genuine. And I know that suppressing them doesn't serve me, but I also know feeling them and giving them power to make decisions or acting from that space is dangerous and has consequences as well. So here's where I'm kind of sitting at now, is going, learning to be with my feelings, learning to feel them and give them a space to be felt, to be acknowledged, to be there, and not giving them the driver's seat or even the passenger seat in terms of dictating how I'm showing up, how I'm responding. And I have this history, this very Jekyll and Hyde history of being really focused, really intentional, really high performing for short periods, and then other periods of being distracted. I'm going to put my energy here, distracted by the shiny object syndrome, or the idea of the sexiness of something and going, I'm in love with the idea of it, but the reality doesn't translate to my capacity, my skills, my purpose, my path. And then the other side of it is being so fucking overwhelmed by everything and by my own self that I don't know what to do next. I don't know the processes, and there's gaps now in my business knowledge, in my jiu-jitsu. Like, I didn't spend the time to learn the fundamental basics of my jiu-jitsu. So now I'm a brown belt who doesn't have a guard. My whole game is very average at the moment. I'm out of shape. All these factors of going, if I'm going to step into building $1 million brand and speaking and storytelling process and skill, what's it going to take to master that? What's it going to take to go, I want to be the mother that my kids need? What does that look like? What kind of mother do I want to be for them? Knowing that my oldest child turns 18 in 2 years, and I want to be there to support her in that journey. And then that ripples down into my other kids and their ages and what they need in that time and space. And wanting to, in my speaking and my storytelling, inspire people and challenge them to want to be the change that they want to see in the world through my role modeling and my example, and being unapologetically myself and sharing what's on my heart, what I'm compelled to share, being myself in these spaces without being intimidated by the fear I felt of where the trolls are going to come from, other people's thoughts, in terms of people that matter to me, people that are impacted by the decisions that I make, not outsiders. I couldn't give a shit what people who I don't know think about me. And trusting that where I'm being called to go is bigger than anything I've done before. Making my first $1 million in business so that I can invest that into my children's future, into the impact I want to have in the community, not just doing the change, but funding the change makers that are doing amazing things, supporting the potential of the change makers, because I know how heavy of a burden it feels to have this fucking potential, this calling to do something, but not knowing how to create the time, the space, so you can develop and nurture that potential is something I'm very intimately familiar with. So being able to feel all these things and going, what's feelings? What's a trauma response? What's just an ego response versus what's a knowing? What needs to be felt because there's a truth there. This is a process and this is a space that I'm at. And I know the complexities of and the consequences of suppressing my feelings or letting my feelings have the driver's seat versus this new, more mature way of going, the best, most powerful thing I can do for my community, for the girls that I serve through Kilalana, through my family, and the vision that I have for the impact I want to have in the world is through me, by being me. And that's going to require me to do something so different in this next chapter, this next season, that I need the space to learn those things, to master those things. And it's going to require me saying no and sacrificing to a lot of other things that are important to me, but they're not core things. And that's a practice. It's going to take time for me to feel that discomfort, that sadness, that anger, and being sitting with it, finding the safe spaces for me to express those feelings so I can get some context and perspective and then act. So I hope you got something from this around my experiences, my story, and as sad as I'm feeling today because of the things that I'm kind of processing and sitting with and being witnessed for, I feel really grateful that I'm at this stage in my life, that I've got this opportunity and this awareness and this calling to do and be something different in this next chapter. And my previous chapter, like Suicide to World Champion, becoming the Barkinji Warrior, this birthing of what's growing in me next, and this sitting in this in-between space is really transformational. It's almost like I'm in this cocoon, this butterfly process, and I'm being called to build my chrysalis so that I can go into the chrysalis, into the cocoon, and just dissolve. And so that I can dissolve and let go of everything that I am, that I was, in order to create the space for me to become what I'm being called to become in this next chapter. And that requires me to build the capacity, the resilience to be able to sit with big feelings, to sit in discomfort for longer periods of time, to be able to sit and make choices that are more purposeful, more intentional, more focused, and knowing with integrity and self-compassion, but truth, like radical responsibility, that the biggest thing that has let me down in the past has been my ability to stay focused, be intentional and committed and consistent with the time, the energy, and the resources that I have, but also letting go of the shiny things and focusing on the 20% of things that are going to yield the 80% of things, results that I want to have. How can I create the space and give myself permission to be my own purpose, to say yes to my heart through my truth, and having the courage to not be concerned about how other people are going to perceive that. Knowing that the more I become, the stronger and healthier I become, the more I build my capacity and my skills to deliver on my potential and my gifts and the mission that and the calling that I feel called and compelled to pursue this next path, this chapter that I'm writing. That ripples out into my family, into my kids, into the impact and the work that I want to do. And in order to do all of those other things, I need to build my own capacity, my own abilities, and my own skills in order to be able to service that. Because I know that who I am now is not capable of delivering on that vision. I need to become her and create this space to do the work from where I am. It's like jiu-jitsu. You've got purple, brown, no, white, blue, purple, brown, and black. And this is not my jiu-jitsu podcast, but it's aligned with that. You start out as white belt, not knowing anything. You come into it, you take some classes, you go, yep, I love this. It's connected. It's for me. And then you start showing up. And then over time, you start to refine. You start to know what's for you, depending on how you develop and how you learn. And that's where I feel like I'm at this moment, is like, I've got a business. I do really amazing things in the entrepreneur space and storytelling. I've got traction. I've got momentum. I'm a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. I've got a history here. I've got skills and I've got time on the mat and in my life as well, and my culture and things. But in order to go to that next level, to be the most powerful version of myself, I'm being called to sit and be with this space and to clear things that don't serve that development space, and to, in terms of creating the space to develop that potential, is uncomfortable. It's sitting with myself and being really honest and reflective around who I was, who I am, and what does that mean for going forward, and the dreams that I have. But then how does that serve those that I love? How does it weave together? And making sense of that for myself, because I know that where I've been and who I am has laid the foundations for where I want to go and where I'm being called to go. But I need to become that next version of myself. I need to become the most powerful, focused version of myself to be committed to that. And that means being more resilient in my emotional responses to things. It's building my resilience and my capacity to stay more focused, to stay more committed and consistent. So, big love you, mob. Hope this landed. Just felt really called and compelled to share this and to just get this off my heart, and look forward to sharing with you more of this journey and how I go, the fuck ups along the way, the experiences, the learning, the growth. And I'm really leaning into my courage on this one, you mob. I'm scared, I'm uncomfortable, I'm sad. And yet there's this groundedness, this knowing that this is the path that I'm moving forward to, that I'm going to be unapologetically myself moving forward. I'm going to take radical responsibility for who I am and how I'm showing up, and be willing to learn and own my mistakes and my integrity to go, I haven't been being my most aligned self in terms of who I see myself as and who I'm being called to be versus who I've been showing up as. A lot of victim mentality, a lot of entitlement of why haven't I hit the tipping point? Why am I still having to hustle? Why aren't I being invited to participate in this thing, or feeling like I'm valued and respected in that space? These are all things I need to grapple with in order to be able to show up and go, what is the most powerful vision that I have? And what am I being called to do? And who is it that I need to become? And what's the gap? What's the work that needs to be done to lay the foundations for that person to emerge, to become the person who can go after those things? Big love you, mob.